So without further ado, let's kick this off. We've got about an hour here. And thank you everyone for joining the Growth Toolkit. This sort of came about as an opportunity to kind of showcase and share with you, all you solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, SMBs, and small businesses and companies that are looking to grow that have maybe sort of hit maybe a plateau, right? We all hit plateaus on a personal and business business level. And so these are some tools that can help you sort of break out of that, those potential plateaus that you might be experiencing. So my name is Eric, and today I'm welcoming Michelle and John, and we will be talking about 3 tools that you can add to your toolkit to help you scale and grow your business. All right, so what we're going to do here today is I'm going to go through these slides, and John will be talking about EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, and then we'll hand it over to Michelle, and she'll be talking about virtual assistants. And then I'll close it up talking a little bit about generative AI and automation and how you can add that to your toolkit. And then we'll wrap it up there and close it up with any Q&A. And for those of you that are just joining us, we are recording this in Riverside, and we'll be publishing this later. And then we are also streaming live, obviously. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comments in the LinkedIn Live. Also note, for those of you that are on LinkedIn Live, there is a 15-second lag between Riverside, which is our recording studio, and the stream in LinkedIn Live. So, all right, well, let's get started. So let me see here. So the Growth Toolkit. I want to use this analogy of building a house, which is really analogous to building your company. So there's 3 tools that we want to talk about here, using that metaphor. So EOS, think of EOS as your foundation, your blueprints, your structure, your vision, and your focus. And then John will go into that. Virtual assistants, you can think of as a skilled team of artisans and technicians that are bringing that vision to life. And Michelle will talk about virtual assistants and how you can tap into that as a tool. And then we'll close up with generative AI and automation. And you can think of this as sort of the intelligent machinery that's used to build your house, that'll be speeding up repetitive processes, increasing both capacity and capabilities of the teams in operations. So we'll turn it over to John. He'll dive into EOS and help us learn a little bit more about this tool and how we can apply it to our businesses. John, you want to take it away?
Great. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Hey, welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to share my experience with EOS, and I'd love for you to take away with some information, some tidbits, things that could help you from your business. But like any great presentation, we got to start with a good quote, and I have one from Gino Wickham. And think about this as we talk about EOS. So vision without traction is an hallucination. And I think this is going to resonate as we start digging a little bit deeper into some of the tools and the blueprint, and as Eric had mentioned, the playbook that EOS provides from that perspective. So next slide, think about some of these things. Reflect on either in your business, a business that you've worked on earlier, or someone that you may know. Do you lack vision or direction? Are you experiencing people problems, or is there a lack of accountability in the organization? Do you find that you have inconsistent execution or focus? Are your meetings ineffective? Do they run on forever? Do you really never feel like you walk away from a meeting accomplishing anything? And do you make decisions based on data, or is it sort of that gut feel? If any of these things resonate with you, I have really good news. There's an answer for it, or at least I can teach you some tools that EOS addresses in each of these areas, and that's the beauty of EOS. So you may be thinking, what is EOS, right? Maybe you've heard about it or don't know what the acronym's all about. It's a very simple business process that provides you with simple tools to help you get your leadership team 100% on the same page on your vision. It gives you traction tools that help you to execute against that vision. And as a result, it creates a healthier, more cohesive team that's all rowing in the same direction. And you may be thinking, well, how did you get involved with EOS and how did EOS start from that perspective? A little bit about me and my journey. I started with a typical corporate career in a big company. I loved it. I got an opportunity to work in a company that was really entrepreneurial, went through significant growth and change, and I learned a lot through that. But I got to a certain point where I felt, you know what? There's only one way to know or test whether I really know what I'm doing, and that's really in a small company. So I searched for a small company that I could help grow. I had, through networking, met a business owner who had 3 companies, and each of his businesses were doing pretty well, but he knew he could get more out of it. He was burning the candle from both ends. He was looking for a way to make sure that he got more out of those businesses, and he handed me the book Traction by Gino Wickham, who I used the quote earlier. And he said, do me a favor, read Traction, which is all about EOS, and let's figure out if you could help me in my businesses implement EOS. And that's where the journey started. I spent 5 years with him implementing EOS in his 3 businesses. And what was unique about it is I got to experience all of this in 3 different businesses at the same time. I will tell you, in my entire career, we got the most results and the most traction, and I experienced the most positive change in everything that we have up there on this slide using EOS. Going through that experience, I have this passion to help people and business owners in their business, and I decided I'm going to become an implementer and help others experience that. So right now, what my role is to help business owners and leaders and entrepreneurs implement EOS. So you may be thinking, well, tell me a little bit more about sort of, what parts of EOS and how does it work and what's the whole process. So the key foundational piece of EOS is we focus on 6 components: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction. And our goal is to get you as a business to 100%. Now, that's really, really difficult. So if we can get you to 80%, that's really when you're starting to get traction on your business and you see things changing. What we end up finding is when I work with clients, for the most part, they're working at 20% of this, so that it's really common to have companies that aren't functioning well. Any progress you can make is significant. So what I'll do is I'll jump into some of these and give you a clearer picture of what they mean and what 100% looks like. So on the next slide, let's talk about vision, right? I presented that issue of, do you have a shared vision or a lack of direction for the organization? What we do is we walk you through a process of answering 8 questions, which are on the next slide. Part of the process is articulating and clearing. Most founders or entrepreneurs who have a business really know what their vision is. Now, the question is that shared by everybody else in the organization? Does everyone understand that? And is everyone aligned and rowing in the same direction? So when I work with a client, I do something called a vision building day. And what we do is we focus on 8 questions to clarify your vision. What's your core values? Core values is what I mean is your culture. What do you expect of employees? What decisions do you use or criteria to hire, fire, and promote individuals so that you have a common behavior within the organization? Core focus becomes what's your passion? What's your sweet spot? Why does your business exist? And what's the sole purpose of it? Then what we do is we step back and we say, let's look way into the future. What's your North Star? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What does this organization look like, either from revenue, size, geography, number of people? This sets the vision for the North Star and where you're going. And then the next step is, who's our target market? Who's our consumer? Who's our client? What's their attributes? What do we do to make sure that we get them and capture them as clients or consumers? And then, as you start to see, we start to roll down and create a 3-year target, because 10 years is too far out. It's too hard to quantify. This is getting a clearer vision of what it starts to look like from an organization standpoint. What investments do we need to make? What does the organization need to do to accomplish this 10-year goal. And again, 3 years is sort of out there and it's not as specific. We bring that down into a 1-year plan, right? This is where you get that clarity. And 1-year plans are not uncommon. You know, a lot of companies have an annual plan, which is really great. Here's where we make a little bit of a difference, is we break them into quarterly goals. Anything more than 90 days is too hard to really assess and gauge your progress. So we help organizations create quarterly goals, or what we call rocks. Now, when you have that, issues start coming up. And we have a great tool to teach you on how to analyze your issues, how to serve them up and knock them down quickly. So once you have those 8 questions answered, we provide something called a vision traction organizer. We put this all in one place so you have one document or a snapshot on what the vision looks like. This is the top part, which is the vision. The next slide, what we do is we put the traction side, that you take the vision and put it into a easy way to look at what the most important things that you need to accomplish in the next year and the next 90 days, as well as a compilation of all of your issues from that perspective. This becomes the key to not only getting your leadership team aligned, because you're going through this process together, but you share this with the rest of the organization so there becomes clarity on who we are, why do we exist, where we're going, and how we're going to get there from that perspective. This becomes that key element of creating the vision, as well as providing some tools to understand where we are, when we're going to get there, and what does it look like from that perspective. The next thing that we do on the next slide is people issues and accountability, okay? You have this vision, but I'm sure I'm going to ask you to think to yourself, I mean, have you ever worked in an organization that didn't have people issues or lack of accountability? It exists everywhere, and it's not uncommon. But the key to start getting traction is to increase and be clarity on accountability and make sure you get the right people in the right seats. And here's a couple of things that we do as I work with clients. One is on the next slide, there's something called an accountability chart. And you may be thinking to yourself, you know what, that looks a whole lot like an org chart. And yes, it does. But here's some key things that are a little bit different than this on accountability chart versus an org chart. One is there's 2 key roles, the visionary and the integrator. Every business has a founder or an entrepreneur or someone who's leading the organization who's really, really good at looking into the future, doing the next big deal, what's our products or services going to be, and how do we make sure we stay ahead of the competition. A lot of times they're not really great at running the day-to-day to the business. And this is where the role called an integrator, which is a key part of EOS, becomes a key function on getting traction. The integrator, think of them as the conductor who keeps the trains on time. They're directing the traffic and making sure that everyone's accountable for what they're doing. And that becomes sort of that relationship between the integrator and the visionary, one of the keys of successes when you use EOS. Now you see below there, sales, marketing, operation. What we do is I walk you through a process of making this specific to your organization, but we don't focus on titles. We leave the titles out and we focus on what's the key function and what's the role. This is where you get the real clarity on the organization of who's accountable. So when something happens in finance, who's the person who's responsible for that, and making sure that they're accountable for that particular function. Now, you may say, okay, that's great. We have a structure, and you mentioned something about right people, right seat. Well, how do you do that? And on the next slide, what we'll do is give you a perfect example of that. This is what we call the people analyzer. And what I love about this is I have a background in HR. It really focuses on the really 2 most important things that you need to know about people in an organization. We already talked about the accountability chart and who's in what seat. This helps you determine, do you have the right person in that seat? We talked about the core values and the culture, which we filled in on top of you, so that at one portion of the people analyzer, you can do a real quick assessment of plus, minus, do they fit our culture going across it? And then you answer the question, do they get the job that they're in? Do they want the job that they're in? And do they have the capacity to do that? This is a real quick snapshot that helps you understand, do you have the right person on the accountability chart in the right seat? This becomes your quarterly conversation to make sure that people know exactly where they stand. Do they fit the culture and the core values? And do they get, want, and have the capacity to do the job they're in? This becomes the key to success on accountability and making sure you get the right people in the right seats. So on the next slide, you'll see this is the traction piece, right? I had mentioned, and you saw the 6 key components was vision on the top and traction on the bottom. Here's the tools that we end up using, and I coach our clients and people that I work with on this. We call something called L10 meetings. This is where you have your weekly updates on where you're at and what you're doing. We talked about the data piece in the 6 components. We create scorecards that you can make decisions on hard data that relates to your business. We put you into a 90-day world where you start creating goals that are achievable. And then we teach you how to identify, discuss, and solve. So on the next slide, Eric will show you what an L10 meeting looks like. And this is where, I mean, if you think about it, how many times have you felt like you've been in a meeting and you've spent an hour with 6 or 7 people who are all leaders in the organization who have a cost and walked out of that meeting like nothing's been accomplished from that perspective? This is really the key to it. What we do is we teach you how to run something called an L10 meeting. You start with good news, what's happening in the business. Let's share something not only from a business perspective, but personally, get it going on a really positive note. Then what we do is the reporting section. Go over your scorecard, which I'll show you in the next slide. 5 minutes on, are we on track or are we off track on where we thought we'd be from this particular goal? Go over your quarterly goals and your rocks. Are we on track or off track? Only report out and talk about any good news or updates on customers and headlines. Every meeting you end with a to list that you come back, somebody's going to report out, did I get it or not? And Eric, if you click one more time, we'll give you the key to all of this. You focus the majority of your meeting on solving issues. You've gone through your scorecard. You've determined whether your goals are on track or off track. The most effective way to have a meeting is start to tackle these issues and problem solve, and that's where you spend the majority of your meeting. Resolving issues, knocking them up, and getting them out of the way to make sure that you become a more effective team. So if you go ahead and bring us forward one more. This is where you start to create, and I mentioned this in the scorecard, this gives you a pulse of where the organization is. You'll start to see every line has a key data point for your business that you start to track on an ongoing basis. So Eric, if you could just click it one more time. This is where you get much, much better on manage your business on data and hard facts. Every line of the scorecard has someone who's accountable for that particular area, what your measurable is, what your goal is, and then you start to see trends of where your business is performing well, above, and you start to see where something becomes an issue and some trends. Example here, weekly revenue starts to go off 2 weeks in a row. We already reported out that there's a problem. You drop it down to your issues list and solve that quickly and get it back on track. And that becomes the key element of the L10 meeting, to manage your business with data that you can clearly see where the trends are. By doing this, you start to become better and better about predicting where your business is on a short-term basis. We've already created rocks, so you're starting to manage and predict where the business is going in the next 90 days and measuring that, which rolls up to an annual plan. So if you bring us to the next slide. This is where you spend the majority of your meeting. We teach you how to identify, discuss, and solve issues. The focus becomes spending most of your meeting identifying the most important things that you need to solve in that particular meeting, and you rank it from 1, 2, and 3, which is on this slide, if you click forward. And spend your time on the most important priority first, identify the root cause, discuss it, and come up with a solve, and who's accountable to come back next week that you discuss on the to-do list and whether it's done or not done. This becomes the key of having a really efficient meeting and problem solving as you manage your business. So if we move forward, I know I went through this quickly, but these are examples of how we start to have a business become 100% strong in each of these 6 components of EOS. Having a clear vision by answering the 8 questions that are shared by all. On the people side, having an accountability chart to make sure you have the right people in the right seat that fit your culture. Data using scorecards and measurables in your L10 meeting that get you better to protect your business. Teaching your tools on how to problem solve and quickly get rid of issues and make sure that they don't come back. There's a piece that we walk you through on creating processes that are followed by all that make sure that you can scale your business effectively. And by doing that, there's tools of creating rocks and having a good meeting pulse that gets you traction on the business. So you may be thinking, well, this is good, but I'm still not really clear on what the process is and how does this work. So we'll move forward on to the next slide, and I'll give you a really good example of that. We already said that the EOS process, the objective is to make sure that you have your vision, you get traction and a healthy team, and live in a 90-day world. I'll give you a great example of how that process works on the next slide. This is the process that I walk you through. What we do is we start with a 90-minute meeting. This is to say, we'll have a group meeting with your leadership team that I would facilitate, and we'll decide, is EOS right for you? And listen, EOS is not right for everyone. And sometimes you have to get to a certain stage to do this. I want to work with clients that need EOS, want my help, and feel like we're a good fit together. If you decide it's the right thing for you, what we do is we move to something called a focus day. And the focus day is interesting because you may see the next slide is vision building. I would always assume that we do vision building first, right? Don't you always start with a vision? Here's what I love about this process. Immediately when you sign up and you use EOS, we focus on getting you the tools to make sure that you have an accountability chart so you know who's doing what. We teach you tools on creating goals, creating a scorecard, and giving you the meeting pulse. So immediately you start getting traction on your business using the things that you learn on the focus day. Take a 30-day timeout, get good at using the accountability aspect of EOS and the traction tools, and then we come back and start the vision building, which is the vision traction organizer that I showed you early. Now, that's a lot to accomplish in one day. So we break it up into 2 days and check in to make sure, are you getting really good at using the tools of the accountability chart, your rocks? How's your meeting pulse working? Are you IDSing properly? As a check-in as we go through this process. Once we've gone through the focus day and done vision building, that's when you launch into your 90-day world. Every quarter you meet as a leadership team, you check your rocks, you check your scorecard, you reset and analyze, did we accomplish what we wanted to get us closer to our annual plan? Have a new 90-day plan to make sure you're getting closer and closer to your annual plan. And this is where the magic happens. This is the cycle that you end up implementing with EOS. You live in a 90-day world, and once a year you have a 2-day offsite. Let's reset, check where we are on our 3-year plan. Are we getting closer to where we are on the 10-year plan? And this is the beauty of EOS. So if you bring us to the next slide. My role, and as I work with clients, is listen, the answer about your business is in the room and with the leadership team. You have 90% of the answers. What I do is when I work with a client, I become your facilitator, your coach, your teacher on how to use EOS properly and making sure that you use it effectively to get everything you want out of your business. Now, what I love about this is my job is to prepare you to use EOS without me and really self-manage and own EOS and become an expert at it so that you don't become dependent. Now, if you really love me and you want me to come back every quarter and help you through that process, I'd love to do that. But my job is to get you self-sufficient so you're not dependent on me. The other thing I love about this is there's no contracts, and I guarantee value of every session. If you don't feel like you're getting the value of EOS and the facilitation and the coaching that I provide, stop it at any time from that perspective. So it becomes really no risk from your perspective if you decide to adopt it. On the next slide, you'll see if this is really of interest to you, I would conduct a 90-minute session with your leadership team. We'll learn all the details of EOS. I'll provide everything that you should know. If EOS is right for you and it's something that you want to do, it's free. I love sharing about this, and I'd love to take questions as we go through this so that you can decide, is EOS for me, and am I the right person to help you to do that? So with that, that's everything that I had to share. So I appreciate that.
Thank you,
Eric, back to
John.
you.
Yeah, I know that was awesome. There was a quote that I don't know who said this, but I heard this somewhere that at the end of the day, every problem is a people problem. And anyway, that's something that stuck with me. What I love about EOS is the simplicity and how you can start sort of gleaning value out of it very quickly. So going back to our little sort of metaphor here and building your house, building your company, we talked about EOS, obviously the foundation, blueprint, structure, how to how to use it to formulate a vision and focus. And now I want to talk a little bit about turn it over to Michelle to talk about virtual assistants. And in the analogy here that we're using, or the metaphor with the house, these are the folks that are actually, these folks can be sort of that skilled team of artisans or technicians that are bringing the vision to life, right? And so, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you to talk about virtual assistants.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate the intro, and if you can go ahead and move to kind of the next slide.
Seems like there's a little bit of a lag here, but it should be up.
There is a lag.
Are you seeing it?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
see the next slide.
There you go.
Okay, I do see the next slide. So, want to start off with questions for you. As an entrepreneur, small business owner, or an executive, are you working more than 40 hours a week? Some of the questions also are you spending too much time on administrative minutia? So some of the things I listed here are social media, marketing, video editing, website creation. And kind of the last third question is just, do you wish you had extra 10 hours a week to spend on your personal life? So these are actually questions to think about, and we can go to the next slide. So I've been a solopreneur, and I've also been a small business owner for the last 12 years. And, these are kind of the common challenges that I've seen. So juggling multiple tasks as kind of a solopreneur or an executive, a lot of times you're basically juggling everything. And it could be everything from research, the sales and marketing, to business development, to product or minutia of scheduling and administration. So all that could really bog you down in working in the business and not on the business. And so a lot of times when you're so in the business, you're missing opportunities because you're not exploring new products or new ventures, new partnerships, or territories. And so it really significantly affects your business growth. The other thing that I have seen has been a common challenge has been hiring. And we've been in the recruiting business I've been doing it for about 15 years. And I know that hiring has always been kind of a pain point for a lot of businesses. Usually it has to do with rising cost. Every year we do see an increase in salaries. But as well, when the economy does really well, there's always a talent shortage. And that's when salaries go up. So next slide. I think there's one before that. So as I mentioned, we have been doing recruiting for the last 12 years, and we've been placing at some of the major companies in the US. So some of them you may recognize that have gone IPO, like Qualtrics, Lucid. Some of them are a little bit more tech focused, others are more B2C type companies, but we have seen it all. And we have joined small companies as small as, I would say, 15 employees and scaled it all the way to 100 plus. We've joined other companies that were 800 plus employees. So we've kind of seen the whole gamut between small, true startup, all the way to large IPO public companies. So next slide. So reason why I'm talking about virtual assistants today is I went through the same problem. I had run my company, my recruiting company, for the last 12 years, and I was doing it all. I thought I could do it better than anybody else. There was extreme, I would say, perfectionism as well as fear of letting go. And I did everything you can imagine. I was building out the website, helping build out the website. I was trying to do our CRM system in terms of building it out, updating it. I was creating some of the PDFs presentations that we had. And at the end of the day, I hit a wall because it was extremely just the time I would spend to create a presentation. It would take me a few days. I had to outline how to create it. And so I got to a point where I was burnt out, as probably a lot of entrepreneurs know. And we hired our first VA, and she's been amazing. And one of the things I didn't realize was just the power of taking a lot of the minutia off our plate so that we could spend time really focusing on the strategic initiatives. And so far what I've realized is that, there is the mindset of delegation, that if someone can do it 70% better than you, or at 70% like you should delegate it. And so that's what I've been in that mindset, and it's been really freeing. It's allowed me to focus on a lot of the strategic initiatives at our company. So next page. So here's a worksheet, and you could take out a piece of paper. This is kind of helpful. This is something I hadn't thought about. Like I said, we've done everything. For the longest time, I was doing a lot of things, and want to have you mark down what activities you are specifically doing that is low value tasks. And when I say low value task, it's somebody that you would pay $20 an hour to do for you. So list out those activities that you do in a week, total them on the right side, on the right column, and same thing with low medium tasks. So something that is a little bit more skilled, somebody that you would pay to do like a website, or things that require somebody who's a little bit more higher skilled. Could be website creation, could be graphics. So list those activities out. And again, this is what you're doing in a week. And then medium high tasks. So medium high tasks tend to be somebody that is doing a little bit more strategic work, probably may have a PhD, MD to the back of their names, may have some sort of degree. So some of the examples here are bookkeeping, creating a sales funnel, automation, working on your PR, employee hiring and interviewing. So these are medium high tasks, and they're valued at $150 an hour, meaning you would pay a consultant to do that. And at the very end, really document kind of what are high value tasks. What are things that you're working on that are things that you can't really outsource, because you're doing strategic calls, you're closing big accounts, you're getting into partnerships or expanding to new markets and creating new products or services. So this kind of gives you an idea, going back to the low value tasks, cutting hair and cleaning your toilets or cleaning your car, detailing it. It gives you a sense of what are you spending most of your time on and what can you really delegate. I would highly recommend, if you're doing some of the low value to low to medium, really think about delegating that out, because it's super affordable. It's also frees you up to do all the higher value tasks. And those are things that most CEOs, in order to grow your company, that's what you need to focus on. So next slide. So I know everyone's familiar with this quadrant. at the top, it's urgent and not urgent in terms of tasks. There's also important and non-important. So if you look at the very upper left corner, important and urgent are things that we need to do immediately. And those are things that, let's say you have a client, you have paying invoices, drafting up proposals. So those are important and urgent things that I would highly recommend that you focus on. But when you look at the bottom right underneath it, not important but urgent, those you need to delegate. And so some of those are like scheduling, responding to emails, coordinating activities, uploading blog posts. Those are things that I would highly recommend kind of focusing on, but also delegating it out. The other thing I would also mention is that in the not urgent and important quadrant, so schedule it. In that quadrant, that's something that if you hire somebody on your team, eventually they can become a little bit more strategic and they can start taking off some of those important but not urgent tasks off your list. And if you train someone properly, they will be able to get that done. And the bottom quadrant, just remove it. It's not important, not urgent. You need to remove it and think about ways to kind of get it out of your system. So, next slide. So, reason why I'm passionate about virtual assistants, again, they're highly skilled workforce. So one of the things I learned about the culture there is everyone's highly educated. So a lot of them have bachelor's degrees. Some of them do have MDs and PhDs. They have a flexible work schedule. A lot of them actually prefer to work graveyard shift, which is in our US time zone. And most of the Filipinos, they speak English as a second language. It's been kind of embedded in their culture. So you'll see that their culture is very aligned with the US and European culture. And they tend to just be hardworking and honest. So you'll find really, really great, loyal employees that work hard and want to make sure that they're doing the best job. The other piece is that there's a scalability piece to it. So if you're looking for onshore full-time hires, a lot of times that process can take 3 to 4 months. But with virtual assistants, that process could take 1 to 2 weeks, and it's fast. You can plug and play. You can get into, you can tap into our VA community, and you can get someone as soon as 1 week. And so that's something that we are pretty quick, and we have it very dialed in terms of finding the top 1 to 2% of VAs in the community. So that's something that we pride ourselves because of our recruiting background. We are good at finding people within the top 1 to 2%. And the last piece is really just the cost. Cost efficiency for offshore virtual assistants is between 12 to 15 an hour. If you look at onshore, typically you're paying 40, sometimes up to 60 an hour for an EA. And somebody in the Philippines can do it just as well for a fraction of the cost. Next slide. So here's a couple of tasks VAs can do. If you haven't thought about, having somebody to help you with some of the kind of the low value to medium tasks, these are a few. So content creation using AI, social media management, manage your email and calendar. They can also do graphic design. They can plan some of your events, coordinate things, do data entry, and as well, they can also do your personal travel arrangements. So you can have them do work, but you can also, if they get to know you really well, you can have them do some of your personal scheduling. And some people have done meal planning, booking flights, planning their kids' birthday parties. So there's a lot of things that VAs can do. Next slide. So this is a kind of a sample of tools that our virtual EAs have used. This is not all inclusive. There's a lot that we can train in, and we specifically have trained most of our VAs in AI tools. So Perplexity, Grammarly, there's Canva, CapCut, as well as ChatGPT. And then we do have a pretty good bench in terms of the social media aspect of LinkedIn, and also hosting live webinars. So they're pretty trained in a lot of these, but they can also quickly get up to speed on ones that you internally have. Next slide. So I want to be able to show what the difference between, so it's powerful having a VA, but it's even more powerful when you have a VA that has AI skills. That is something that we train for, because those are skills that everyone needs to know. So you don't have to learn how to use AI. And so here's a graph just showing you how it's like doing basic video editing. So if you're using a software, it could take you 1 to 2 hours. But in comparison, if you're using AI or your VA is using AI, it could be 10 to 20 minutes. And you can see that huge difference between the two. Next slide. Here's another option. So landing page creation. When you look at it, so Wix could take you 5 to 7 days. I know from experience, it took me a long time, and my co-founder spent a long time creating our websites. Now using Gamma, a website could be created in 1 to 2 hours, and you could throw it up. And that's kind of the beauty, that you can have your VA who knows how to use AI can really create a beautiful landing page. And ours right now is created in Gamma. And so with kind of the fraction of time, and they're super efficient with that. And then the last slide. So this is actually really important. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, even coaches, that create a lot of articles in long form posts. If you were to create it from scratch, a lot of times it's 7 to 14 hours. It's really time consuming. But with ChatGPT or some of these other tools like Grammarly, and even researching, it takes about 1 to 3 hours. And right now our team is producing our articles between 1 to 2 hours, long form articles. So we're not spending hours, 7 hours plus on these. So it's a game changer in terms of having somebody who's trained in AI, but as well as is our assistant or VA, to take a lot of that off our plates.
Thanks, Michelle. That was awesome. So we were talking about EOS and as sort of the first tool in that toolbox, and then Michelle was talking about virtual assistants in terms of getting the right people in the right seats. And she kind of alluded a little bit to AI and how that's sort of increasing the capabilities and the capacity of these team members. And so I want to segue into generative AI and automation. This is the third tool that we want to talk about today that you can add to your toolbox. Really, this is something that's, over the past 2 years has really blown up, right? And so going back to the house analogy, generative AI automation is sort of the intelligent machinery, heavy machinery, that's really speeding up the repetitive processes and increasing both capacity and capabilities of not only the teams and the staff, but also in the operations, right? And so generative AI, can boost, like I said, the capacity and the capabilities, said some AI expert. I've seen this firsthand in terms of our application of AI to our teams and to our virtual assistants. So what is generative AI good for? Here's a few things that I want to talk about. It's really good at supercharging your team's efficiency. So if you give your team members superpowers in the form of AI, it increases their capabilities and their capacity. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, your one staff member could accomplish now sort of the equivalent of 3x, 4x. I mean, you saw some of the numbers Michelle was throwing out there with AI and without AI. Those are consistent with the numbers that we've seen. Maybe not yet 10x, but we're seeing at least double, 3 times, 4 times the productivity of what we were seeing in the past with past team members and virtual assistants. Generative AI is also good at information mobilization. So it's really getting the stuff out of your head and mobilizing that information. Insight generation, so synthesizing vast amounts of information, teasing out actionable insights from them. Many of you are probably familiar with using like AI recorders like Fathom or what is it, Otterly? I forget the other one. There's a lot of AI recorders out there that'll record and transcribe your Zoom conversations, and there's an amazing amount of information you can tease out of there. We've been applying those in different ways that I'll share with you later. AI is also good at cognification and automation. What I mean by cognification is really adding intelligence and enabling automation to processes that were previously only performed by humans because they could only be performed by humans. Now these things, now generative AI can introduce intelligence in all the little nooks and crannies in your processes. So we'll talk about these in a minute here. So the 10x employee or operation, right? This is sort of what we aspire to. A lot of this has been used in terms of like the 10x developer or engineer because of just the scale that you can get. So what generative AI is making a reality now is you don't need to be a coder to squeeze out sort of efficiencies or to enable software to do what you want to do. Now you can do that in natural language. In natural language and generative AI, it's made generative AI so accessible to even people that are not familiar with coding or even how to, they're not very technical. And so I don't think we're at the 10x yet, but we're already seeing multiples of a team member's capabilities and productivity. And this is only going to get better. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the use cases where we've seen generative AI be really effective as a tool in some concrete examples. So the first one is productized knowledge. So with any organization, even if it's a one-person organization, chances are you have a ton of notes. Maybe the stuff is in your head. Especially if you have more than one person, right? You have a lot of resources in terms of knowledge, experience. And so what AI allows you to do is allows you to transform and mobilize some of this static knowledge into interactive, scalable, and personalized information products. And these products can be used either internally for things like training your own staff, or it could be packaged and presented to clients or customers in ways that can help sort of benefit their experience, right? So some examples here are LLM accessible knowledge bases, wikis. A lot of companies have wikis where they take notes and they document things like standard operating procedures. A lot of folks are using Notion. So whatever case may be, chances are you have a repository of knowledge. And a lot of times this knowledge gets very challenging to access, right? Maybe you do a keyword search or something, but eventually you're looking for the answer, right? You're not just looking for a document. And so what generative AI allows is almost the instant access to this knowledge base in ways that really remove a lot of the friction. So some other examples are persona bots for coaches. A lot of coaches out there, Michelle kind of alluded to sort of coaching clients earlier. There's a lot of coaches out there that have a specialization in certain areas. John being one of them, right? John is an expert in EOS, and he has a lot of he has a lot of experience and knowledge about EOS in his brain. He probably has a lot of information, case studies, and experiences like that on paper. And so, but John is just one person. He's just one coach, right? And so, how can he replicate himself in a way that is at least meeting the 80% of what his clients might need, or prospective clients, right? If he has people coming to his website and they just have a few questions about EOS, they can interact with John's persona bot that's basically tapping all the knowledge in his brain and in his knowledge base to answer some of these questions and ultimately maybe help them get closer to making a purchase or converting as a client, right? Personalized continuing education. I touched on this a second ago, but organizations now, they can start to develop a sort of a knowledge base of training, standard operating procedures. This is something that we do on our virtual assistant agency side, right? We're developing a lot of SOPs in certain ways to do things. So, for example, how to promote an event on LinkedIn, right? And so a lot of that information is locked up in people's heads, but we've gotten it down on paper. But now how do you get it accessible in the right time, in the right place, in the right context, to the right people? So personalized education and staff development and personalized training is one way to do that through these LLM bots. Lead qualification, that's another thing, right? Lead qualification is also similar to you're not only asking the prospective leads questions to qualify them, but you're also educating them, right? John might be educating them on EOS. Michelle might be educating prospective clients on, how to work with a virtual assistant, right? And so Michelle and John, they can only scale because there's only one person. But if they had a bot that was able to represent them, their persona, their voice, their style, with virtually instant access to everything in their brains and all these documents, that's a good representation of them that can scale. It might not be 100%, but it might be 80%. And 80% 24/7 might be good enough to help you qualify and generate more leads, right? So that's one example of how LLMs are used with respect to productized knowledge. Another use case is automated content repurposing. Michelle alluded to this earlier. There's a lot of folks out there that are writing content, or they might be creating content in the form of podcasts, webinars, or whatnot. A lot of these webinars or podcasts, if you're ever on a podcast, obviously they're recording it because it's getting published, but that recording of you, for example, talking about your area of expertise or your experience or your story, that can be transcribed. And that transcription, it would take a human a long time to kind of pour through that, tease out, any relevant points, and sort of massage and package that into a long form or short form article. It's quite tedious. An LLM, a GPT, is almost built perfectly for this. It can take long form content in the form of transcriptions from your podcast, and it can write short form, long form articles. It can massage it into a TikTok video, right? So these things are happening. Like if you just have one piece of content, you can very quickly massage it into different forms of content very easily. And if you don't know how to do that, a virtual assistant trained in these approaches can do it for you very quickly, right? Creating long-form, short-form content from podcasts, VA-powered content creation, your voice, your style, and your expertise. These bots are getting so much better now, right? And one of the things that we're doing on our AI automation agency side is we're developing playbooks for how we can take your content that was written by you or created by you, maybe in the form of a webinar or podcast, and we can distill that down into your specific voice, your specific style, and then obviously your expertise. And we can augment that with other documents. And now we have a little bot, if you want to call it, or a GPT that can now write in your style. It can repackage existing content, it can do research, and it can package that in your voice, your style, your expertise into whatever format of content you want. It's super fast and it's super cost effective. That's another use case. I think I'll go through one or two more use cases here. Meeting and call analysis. So AI can analyze meeting call transcripts and provide real-time insights and performance feedback. So the obvious example is sales call analysis and proposal generation. If you are a small business or a startup or a service provider and you're going on sales calls, a lot of times they're on Zoom, at least for us. Record those. You can transcribe them, and it's amazing how many insights you can tease out of those calls, right? Insights for self-improvement, insights for prospective client sentiment, insights, and you can even easily apply Medic or Spiced or these different sales approaches to analyzing these calls and suggesting ways that you can improve, and then also suggesting sort of next steps and proposal generation. Right. So when you're on these sales calls, you're basically interviewing the prospective clients, and now you can take that and pop that into a GPT, tease out the next steps, and you can use that to inform some automated research that you might be doing using Perplexity, for example, and very quickly. I'm talking in the matter of 30 minutes, dozens of minutes. You could put a proposal together that responds very specifically to the needs and the pain points of the prospective client you just spoke with. It would take a day and a lot of effort to get that out. You can get that out within the next 30 minutes of jumping off that call. Virtual assistant end of day and end of week report analysis. This is not unique to virtual assistants, but it's something that we do on the virtual assistant agency side. We do an end of day and they do an end of day and end of week report. And we're using GPTs to analyze these reports. There's several things that we're looking for. Any sentiment analysis on the VA, any sentiment analysis around the client. We're trying to project any ups or downs in terms of morale, and then we're also looking for business development opportunities. We are getting a lot of end-of-day reports. They are several paragraphs long, it would take a person forever to read through these things. We have them go into documents, and we're having the GPTs analyze these things and pull out reports for those 4 aspects. So it helps inform training, account management, heading off any potential issues, and also informing sales with respect to business development and identifying any opportunities. These are surfaced on a daily basis, and so it helps power our operations much more effectively. And I won't go through all these other examples, but interview and hiring analysis. Again, my background, Michelle's background, is in recruiting. And God, I wish we had these tools even 5 years ago, right? The ability to ingest and aggregate and analyze huge amounts of information and summarize that and tease out actionable insights is amazing. Brainstorm synthesis, right? You can integrate this into the EOS process in terms of, these meetings where everybody has their own ideas around what the vision or the core values might be. Turn a recorder on, transcribe that whole thing, and it'll be amazing. It's amazing how much you can tease out of the transcript using a GPT. So what am I excited about? Generative AI and its applications are advancing at a rapid pace, and here's what to keep an eye out for. Multimodal contextual AI. Most folks out there are familiar with text-based AI. You're asking a question, it's giving you a text-based response. So all the context you're providing historically has been in text. Now you can upload images, you can upload videos, and you can start to upload audio or even videos with facial recognition capabilities. We're at the forefront of that. So this stuff is starting to come out there, but it's only going to get better, right? And so multimodal is amazing. Enhanced bot UIs. So hyper-personalized, omni-channel, high-fidelity video and voice interfaces with customers, even your internal team members, right? It's amazing that all this stuff is becoming much more accessible and higher fidelity. Graph RAG, which is a bit of a technical kind of thing, but this has to do with knowledge bases and it just getting smarter and smarter about your knowledge in the form of documents and things like that. So it's just getting smarter and smarter. Agentic applications, these are basically AI-powered applications that can not just think and provide responses, but they can actually start taking autonomous action. They can start doing things given all the context that they know, right? So the classic example is booking you and your family a trip to Europe, right? Everything it knows about you in terms of your preferences, it can go and take action and schedule, right? Schedule, make the reservations, so forth. Long-tail applications, right? This is something I'm excited about because it's new business opportunities, new business models in niche markets and product offerings. And so while the big companies are sort of at the head and they have distribution, there's going to be a long tail of all kinds of opportunities that are going to be powered by generative AI. It's the new emerging platform of technology that new startups are going to be built upon. So super excited about that. So just to recap here, as we come back, your toolkit for company growth. 3 things: EOS, your foundation, your blueprints, your structure, your vision, virtual assistants, right? Getting the right people in the right seats and doing it sooner rather than later, right? Getting a skilled team of artisans at a fraction of the cost, right? You can talk to Michelle about that. And then generative AI and automation, right? This is the intelligent machinery that I just spoke about that will help turn your operations and your team members into 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, and eventually 10x their capabilities and their capacity. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up with any Q&A that might be out there. I encourage you all to follow John, Michelle, and me on LinkedIn. Connect with us. Here's our email addresses. And if you have any questions, would love to hear it. Pop it into the comments, and we can take them. We can take a few questions here in a few minutes. We might not have any questions, but I guess maybe a question for you, Michelle. I guess if somebody wanted to get started with a virtual assistant, where would be the best place for them to start, and what are some of the hurdles that you see folks having to overcome by making that leap? I think there's a lot of folks out there that they've never hired before, and hiring somebody overseas seems kind of daunting. Like, what would you tell? What advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, what I've seen in terms of hurdles are most people don't feel like they have enough time. Maybe when I say time, I'm talking about just because we do 20 hours or we do 40 hours a week. And those are the two options in terms of VA. And a lot of people think they don't have enough time, so they underestimate the work. So they'll say, I only have 10 hours that I need to give. I don't have that much work. What ends up happening is if you give work and they do an awesome job, you end up giving more work. And that was our thing, was that we were afraid for our first VA that we didn't have enough work. And as we gave our VA more work, she took on more, and she took on a little bit more strategic work. And a lot of people have a fear of just letting go. And especially if you've never hired, it's extremely hard initially. A lot of it has to do with the mental mind shift and delegating. And once you get over that hurdle and you start to trust the person and they do a really good job, then you start to realize, oh, I actually have 1.5 positions, meaning I need to hire another person. And then it soon enough becomes a 2-person job. And so that's kind of the evolution that I've seen, is that people, they've always started doing everything themselves, and letting that go is the hardest piece.
Yeah, yeah. And then John, I had a question for you. That I forgot what that diagram was called, but it looked like an org chart where you had I think the term was a visionary and then the integrator. Um, what is the difference between those two folks? I know that one is more maybe looking out further ahead, and then the integrators maybe more in the day-to-day, they're more tactical execution. But how have you seen teams sort of decide who wears that label, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah, so on the accountability chart, that's part of what we do in one of our sessions with the team is, to a certain extent, we go in the room and we fire everybody out of the chairs that they're in. Really what ends up happening with startups and growth companies is everyone wants to help out, right? And there's never enough people to do everything that has to be done. So everyone starts pitching in and taking on roles and accountability. What this does is it helps you step back and say, where we are today, even though that's what you've been doing in the past, what's the right structure first? And then we go backwards and start putting those people back into roles that make sense. Sometimes there's always someone who sort of acts as that operator. You call it a COO in traditional terms. That's the type of person that would generally go into an integrator role.
Mhm.
And the visionary is typically the founder or someone who started the business, who's running it. And what happens is, as you grow, it teaches the skills to that visionary, the founder, the entrepreneur, on how to step back, how to delegate, and have somebody else help them run the day-to-day. And that's really where the roles start to evolve from.
Yeah. Now those roles are they're not, integrator and visionary. They're not titles, right? They're not where you're not going from CEO to
Yeah,
visionary. You still have
yeah.
your normal titles, but that accountability label, is that only sort of used within that accountability chart? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, the most part is you use that to make sure you know who to go to when something goes wrong or when you have a question about that particular function.
Okay.
That's where the accountability chart, the magic happens from that perspective. Some clients have titles that they use. What we don't want to do is get so caught up on the titles and the levels. We just want to make sure there's clarity on who does what and who's accountable for each of these functions.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about EOS and how we can even integrate into our own business. It seems like there's a lot of uh, opportunity to minimize chaos.
It's
So,
absolutely it.
all right. Well, I don't see any other questions, from the group here. So we'll wrap it up as of now. Thank you, everyone out there. We appreciate it. This will be published on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll make that available, the recording available. It'll also be on LinkedIn Live. So, John, Michelle, thank you guys for your time and for your input. And for folks out there, please connect with us and feel free to reach out to us. And we'll see you next time.
All right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Thank you all.